What's going on, guys? It's Levi at Old Iron Off-Road. Just wanted to do a little video here today, covering some things that I see people kind of having a problem with on some of the Facebook forums and other sources of internet places. What we're doing today is we're actually going to start a distributor install from scratch, which is going to include finding top dead center on compression stroke of the engine on the number 8 cylinder for a V8 and number 1 cylinder for the 4 cylinders, and kind of clocking and orienting the distributor in the proper orientation, and you know, going through the firing order with your plug wires and all that good stuff. You know, I see a lot of people online, they'll, you know, have an engine that comes in that doesn't have a distributor in it, or they've removed the distributor for whatever reason, and then trying to reinstall the distributor, they tend to have a problem kind of being certain whether or not the engine's timed correctly enough for the initial fire, or you know, they end up with a no spark or whatever. Just kind of to give you an idea how this goes, and to kind of save yourself a lot of trouble and headache, and to kind of just take some of the mystery out of it, and just give you like basically a step-by-step process on how this goes down. So here in just a second, I'm gonna kind of give you a different view. I'm gonna put the camera down, and then we're gonna go through and show you the proper process and procedure for actually finding top dead center on the number 8 cylinder compression stroke. Top dead center compression stroke, that's a very important thing. You can be on top dead center on exhaust stroke or compression stroke. For the sake of firing the motor and for initial timing, you always want to be on compression stroke. So like I said, I'm going to go through and I'm going to show you the proper process and procedure to make that happen. And then from there, we'll kind of go through, you know, dropping the distributor in, where the rotor needs to be pointing. Technically, the rotor can be pointing anywhere. You just have to remember wherever it's pointing is going to be your number 8 cylinder when you start reinstalling the plug wires. But for the sake of this video and showing you how it's supposed to be done and outlined in the service manual, the distributor, the rotor needs to be pointing in at the number 8, the specific cap terminal that is supposed to be for the number 8 cylinder. So we're going to show you where that is and how to do all that good stuff. So like I said, I'll give you a quick view. I don't know how well I can turn this thing around. I can't see when I turn it around. What you can see we have here is a little V8 800. The distributor is removed. I don't know how well you can see. I don't know if I'm even aiming the camera. It's hard to tell. There is no distributor in this area. So all my plug wires are pulled loose. For the purpose of this video, I'm just going to leave them kind of hooked up. If they were removed, it doesn't matter. You can do a plug wire install at the same time, but just to save time and energy, I'm going to leave the plug wires where they are. Starting off, I do have the number 8 plug wire off of the spark plug, and the number 8 plug removed from its hole. That's the first step in finding top dead cylinder compression stroke. And again, it's number 8 cylinder. Hopefully anybody that is doing this knows where the cylinders are. I guess just in case, driver side, standing, obviously driver side or passenger side, obviously those are pretty specific points in the engine compartment. So passenger side bank is going to be your even numbers. Front to back, it's 2, 4, 6, 8. Driver side, front to back is 1, 3, 5, 7. So you've got even numbers on passenger side bank, odd numbers on the driver side bank, and front to rear, higher to lower numbers. Again, you know, passenger side 2, 4, 6, 8, front to back. Driver side 1, 3, 5, 7, front to back. So that kind of gives you an idea how the cylinders are actually laid out, so you know which cylinder's what when you're putting your plug wires back on. Obviously the firing order on this thing, in International Harvester and all their infinite wisdom, they put the firing order on the intake for you. Some intakes, the way they're stamped or cast, it's a little harder to see exactly where the firing order is if you've got a carburetor, like a 4-barrel carburetor, or some of the well, if you're using the proper Holley base plate gasket, it gets kind of hard to see some of the first few numbers. But internet is a great source. You can always find the firing order from it on binderplanet.com. So yeah, that should cover the kind of the basic outline of what we're doing in this video. Like I said, I'm going to give you a different view, and we're going to find top dead cylinder compression stroke on this engine. And I will go ahead and tell you that on a V800 it is a lot easier to have a helper. On a Scout 2, a lot of times you can actually get from the top side on the passenger side of the engine compartment, you can actually stand with your left finger in the number 8 cylinder plug hole, and actually put a ratchet on the crank pulley bolt. On a V8 800, it's not quite achievable from the top side, so I'm going to have to lay down underneath it, and I'll have the help of my lovely assistant with her finger over the plug hole, and basically just have her listen for or feel when the cylinder builds compression, when it blows her finger off. And I like to make a couple extra revolutions. If I find compression on one stroke, I go around one more time. The next time it should be exhaust stroke, so there shouldn't be any pressure built. And then obviously the next stroke again is going to be compression. So I usually go around a couple times just to verify. So that should be the basic explanation. Hopefully everybody's following along to this point and kind of understands where we're going with it. And we'll see you again here in just a second. This is my lovely assistant, Athena. This is my wife. Say hi.
Hello.
Okay, so this is the point where we come to the video where I ask my wife to put her finger in the hole, the spark plug hole. So all you weirdos out there getting some other kind of creepy idea, it's not that kind of garage. I'm going to be located down here. I've already got a ratchet hanging from the crank pulley bolt. I'm going to be barring the engine over while she is feeling with her finger in the number 8 spark plug hole, just like that. So we are going to set the camera, maybe if I can get it to cooperate and stay. We got a lovely view of my wife. So I'm going to turn the engine over, and as soon as she feels compression, she's going to tell me. We're going to make a couple extra little revolutions just to be sure, and then we're going to align the crank harmonic balancer up with the 0 mark on the timing cover. So, you ready?
Ready.
Ready. Nothing. No?
Not yet.
This one should be it.
There.
Okay.
There.
Alright, you can remove your finger from the hole. I'll take this. So, hopefully everybody understands, and hopefully you could actually hear the gasp of air when you feel that cylinder, when the intake and the exhaust valves are closed. That's the compression stroke. So obviously as the piston travels towards top dead center, it's going to be building pressure. That's what you're listening for. If the exhaust valve is open on the exhaust stroke, obviously the air is going to escape through the valve. You're not going to have any pressure build up. So when finding top dead center compression stroke, and again, having a helper makes life a lot easier. Obviously she was physically feeling for air to escape, but with her finger over the plug, I could hear audibly air escaping from around her finger. So that gave me a pretty good idea that we were on compression stroke. Again, always make a couple of, when you find compression stroke, the next revolution is going to be exhaust stroke. The next revolution again, obviously, is going to be compression stroke. So if you find compression stroke, you go around one more time, come back up, the next revolution. Make sure just to double check that you're on compression. So that's it for this part. Hey guys, here we are back in the engine compartment. What I've done is I've actually put a paint mark on the 0 mark on the timing cover, and I've also taken and painted the mark on the harmonic balancer that corresponds with that's your crank balancer timing mark. Hopefully you can kind of see I'm having to shine a flashlight. Like I said, 800s are a little tight as far as for visual, especially for the sake of making a video. So hopefully you can see these timing marks okay. Starting at the top, the 5 at the very top is actually 5 degrees after top dead center. 0 is next. 5 degrees below top dead center is the next one, third one down. 10 below, 15, 20, so on and so forth. Well, actually I think it stops at 25. Can't really see right now. But anyway, for the sake of timing it, we're going to drop it. We're dropping the distributor in with the piston is on, the number 8 piston is on top dead center compression stroke. When your harmonic balancer is aligned with 0, that is top dead center absolute. The only time that can possibly vary, and this is kind of gonna maybe confuse some people, hopefully not. There are instances where harmonic balancers are actually pressed onto their center using a rubber bushing. This style balancer is not. It's the solid cast balancer, so there's no way that it can slip, but there are instances where timing marks won't really correspond with each other as far as the timing cover and the balancer mark if the balancer has ever slipped. The solution for that is to actually use a piston stop tool and actually verify and mark the travel of the piston itself going through the spark plug hole. In this case, you don't have to worry about it. It's not something that occurs a whole lot, so I don't want to confuse people and freak people out and think that that's something that they really need to dig into a lot of times. In my entire life of working on anything, I've ran into it one time, and it was on a 258 AMC motor that the balancer had actually slipped on, and it was throwing the timing off, and made me scratch my head for a little while until I figured out what was going on. But just wanted to kind of throw that out there. But yeah, like I said, this is what you're going for. Number 8 cylinder on top dead center compression stroke. These lines should line up. The crank balancer and the timing cover mark should align. Here we go, guys. For the sake of this part of the video, I actually went ahead and marked the firing order on the distributor cap. You can see that the number 1 cylinder is actually cast into the plastic, and it is on a lot of distributors. So that's kind of a reference point, and you know the corresponding cap terminal after or before 1 is going to be number 8. So we're going to start at number 8, and we're going to go clockwise around the cap in the firing order, which firing order means the order in which each cylinder achieves or reaches its top dead cylinder compression stroke. So 8, 4, 3, 6, 5, 7, 2, 1. Pretty obvious. With the cap installed onto the distributor, number 8 is going to be facing straight forward. That gives you ample room for the vacuum advance to clear in between the water pump and the intake, and it should give you full range of sweep, so you can make fine-tune adjustments for the timing once everything's installed and running, and timing actually needs to be set with a light. So hopefully with this, once we drop it in though, we're going to get you really, really close. You should be able to see that we're actually damn near top dead center on firing, and we can advance the time of the taste. But just alone dropping the distributor in the way I'm going to show you, you should be dead nuts on when you go to fire it up. So guys, so here we are with the distributor installed. You can see here that the rotor is pointing straight forward, and yes, that is an original IH rotor. It's just one I grabbed off the shelf. We're not going to use that one, but I had it laying around. I like to keep them in. Oddly enough, it's actually still good and could be used. But anyway, we've got it pointing straight forward. You can see that this bolt on the water pump housing, the rotor pretty much aligns directly with it. Obviously, when you drop this thing in, you've got the oil pump drive down inside of the engine, and you have to kind of align the distributor with that, and you also have to engage the cam gear that actually drives the distributor. So I was going to show you real quick, if I could, how you can physically walk that around. One way to do it, if you know, when you drop this distributor all the way back in, it's going to rotate the rotor back. Like the rotor is going to be pointed kind of over here. When it goes down and engages the gears are not straight cut gears. So as it drops into place, it's going to rotate the rotor counterclockwise, so you have to kind of anticipate that. And you also, basically, as you're dropping it in, you feel for gear tooth engagement, and you also feel for that oil pump drive. So I was actually going to take and set this in. Hopefully I can raise it up enough where you can see the rotor walking backwards. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it at a really weird spot, and I'm going to show you how you can kind of physically and get it lined back up where it needs to be. So as you can see right now, the rotor's pointing at a completely opposite direction. You can actually walk, if you lift the distributor up just enough that it disengages the gears, you can actually slip the distributor on the teeth and still engage the oil pump at the same time and just walk it around to where you need it to be. So I was going to try to kind of show you how that's done, if I can keep my fat fingers out of the way here. So we're up, we're still engaged, I can't turn the rotor. I'm going to come up just a little more, and now I can free roll it. I felt it catch a tooth there, but that's not really where I want to be, because if I engage it there, we're still going to be real close back to where we were. So as you can see, we're still off. So I'm going to come up out again, wiggle it free, and I'm going to drop the distributor in until it just barely touches the gear. I can feel it touching the gear. So I'm going to come up just a little more, clock it around, and so you can see I've caught the next tooth. We're still off, but we're working our way in the right direction. I'm going to come up till I just barely clear the teeth of the cam, and I'm going to click it over to the next tooth. And voila, as you can see, we're back to where we were. We're pointed straight forward back at that bolt. Like I said, you can do that all the way around if you want. It doesn't matter if the rotor's pointing back this way. You can do it. You can walk it around till you get it in the proper orientation. Hopefully that makes sense. Alright guys, so what we've got going on here is I wanted to demonstrate to you like how you can visually kind of check where the ignition event is going to occur, for the sake of, you know, just firing it up and being super close. For one, again, we've got the visual reference. We know that our rotor is actually pointing at this bolt straight forward. So if we align that cap terminal at that bolt, we know we're in the ballpark, like we're not too far off now. You know, this way or that way can be a few degrees either direction, but for the sake of what we're doing, we know we're super close. There's no need to fire it up and grab the distributor and turn it all over the place. It should light right there. With Petronics, this is a Petronics igniter. This is a little more difficult to kind of demonstrate than if this was points. If it was points, we could take our negative lead coming from the distributor, and hopefully we all understand kind of how points and how ignition systems work. Basically what we're doing is we're supplying power to the coil, and for simplicity's sake, we'll explain the coil as being a step-up transformer. There's a series of windings. There's primary and secondary windings in this thing, and basically it takes a 12-volt signal, and with ground applied, it stores the 12-volt signal. As soon as ground is removed, it releases energy. It converts the low energy to a high energy, and it travels through the secondary windings, out this wire, down into the cap, through the rotor, and then in this case out the number 8 wire that we've got hooked up over here to an inline plug tester and to our spark plug. So we can actually, with this, we can kind of see when the ignition event is going to occur. Now with this much metal showing on this, I don't think our gap's going to jump that far, but it could possibly jump. But we're going to kind of stay back and we're going to focus on this light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly, with the key on, I'm going to rotate this distributor until we visually see an ignition event in that light. Now with this being a Petronics, again, you know, it's not like points, where points we can basically take a test light and hook to this ground lead, and we can visually see like, oh, okay, our points are grounded, they're closed, there's not going to be a coil discharge, and then we can slowly rotate this until we lose ground, and then at that point, exactly, as soon as we lose ground, we know that's when the ignition event is going to occur. We can hook our wire back up and it'll fire right up. Again, with the Petronics, this is not, slow rotation won't get it. It has to be a fairly quick sweep past to trigger the magnetic pickup. So it's not as accurate, but it does get you in the ballpark, and you can actually, with what we're doing, we can kind of see when ignition occurs. Just for the visual sake of it, we can kind of get an idea of what's going on. So again, we know our piston hasn't changed. Our piston is at top dead center on compression stroke on number 8. We've got our number 8 plug wire. That's going to be the first one to fire in our sequence. That's the first cylinder that we time off of on an SV, is number 8. So when we put the plug wires back on, obviously we'll go in firing order. This terminal will go to the number 4 cylinder. This will go to the 3, so on and so forth, all the way around until we end up back at our last plug wire, which is going to be the number 1 plug wire. Hopefully all this makes sense, and I'm not sounding like a rambling idiot. I'm going to try to set the phone up where we can kind of see this incandescent spark plug tester, if I can get it balanced. This is kind of a balancing act, so just bear with me. Alright, we can see that. So I'm going to turn the key on, and I'm actually going to rotate the distributor, and hopefully we can see an ignition event, and we know we can lock the distributor down reasonably tight at that point. We don't want to torque it all the way down because we are going to have to fine tune it with a timing light, but that should get us in the ballpark for the sake of firing. So I'm going to turn the key on. Key's on, ignition's hot, and we're going to rotate this and watch for a ignition discharge. So we just saw that, and I'm still really close to in the ballpark of where we were. Let me turn the key off because we don't want to leave the key on. So hopefully that makes sense. And as you can see, we're still really close to where we were. I didn't have to move it very much to get an ignition event to occur. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and we're going to put all our plug wires back on, and we're going to fire it up, and hopefully she lights right off like she's supposed to. Alright guys, we're back. As you can see, we've got all our plug wires hooked up, firing order correct. Everything goes to its corresponding cylinders. I'm sure everybody understands that if we're, number 3 in the firing order, it needs to go to the number 3 cylinder. That should be pretty self-explanatory. The distributor is somewhat loose. I have went ahead and I've hooked up a timing light. We've got it zeroed out right now. So we're going to fire it up. Hopefully it fires, and we're going to see how far out we actually are. We're going to give her a couple of thumps of gas, and ignore the fact that I don't have a throttle hooked up or any kind of return springs. We're not going to be stupid. We're going to make sure that the throttle's pushed all the way forward before we start it. It runs! It's not like Gas Monkey Garage where they're like, oh man, what do we do? And it won't run, it won't start. Oh, it's 180 degrees out. This is fairly simple if you just kind of be methodical and think your way through it. Anybody can do this. It's super easy. And I hope that I've explained it well enough that you guys understand what was supposed to happen and how this works. Let's check the timing and let's see how far off we are or how close. We're 15 degrees advanced. We're going to dial her down to about 8. In most cases I've found that 10 is a little too much. There's no set number of degrees advanced. I mean, a lot of it depends on what you're going to be doing with the vehicle, if you're going to be towing, if you're in a D-Series pickup and you're going to be towing, you don't want to throw a bunch of advance at it, because if you lug it or pulling grades, you're going to ping. With Scouts, you know, you're probably not going to be towing. They're a little lighter. You can get by with a little more. A lot of it depends on the plug that you're running too, honestly. I've noticed that with the 303 plugs, it seems like I can eke a little more timing out of them than I can with the 56s. I think that's right. I should know all these numbers by heart, but sadly I don't. I've got too much other useless junk rattling around in my brain. But anyway, you know, there it is. You see it. It wasn't a chore. It wasn't an ordeal. You know, sometimes it can be a little harder if you're working with an unknown part, or you know, you don't really know a whole lot about the quality of the engine. But this is all assuming you're starting with a known healthy engine or something that's fairly willing to run. Just follow the steps that I gave you, and it should start every time. And I mean, if you're not dead on, it'll at least be in the ballpark of where you need to be to get it to light. So I hope this was all understandable and didn't seem overly complicated. I hope I explained it well enough that everybody kind of understands how to do it. Again, follow these steps and you'll have a running motor. Thanks for watching.